Not gonna help.
Sure. Okay, just so you, Council, we're on YouTube right now, just so you guys know. Right now? Can you hear me talking right now? Here, I'll keep talking and see if that. If you think no, still, is it? Is that Rob's ear or is it voice or is it?
Well, I can't tell whether it's coming this way or
As long as you can hear me. Yeah. How about if I whisper? If I whisper, can you hear me? Oh, there you go. Okay, so you probably can't hear it then.
No, I could hear you.
You could. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order for 7:02 p.m. At the regular meeting of council. And I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. I am looking for an approval of the regular council agenda for December 9th, please. Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Public participation. I would like to invite anyone in the audience to please step forward to take this opportunity to address council, to present concerns or ask questions of council. Please advise that council cannot receive comments on matters where a public hearing has been held until the bylaw regarding that matter has been adopted. 20 minutes is allocated for public participation. Topics should be addressed briefly to allow other speakers to speak. And please, when you do step forward, please state your name and address. And this is being recorded, so you will be on camera as well. Saying that, is there any public who would like to make a comment this evening? Sorry, would you mind just hitting your mic for you? So, oh, there. You know what? There, I'll turn it on for you. There you go.
You're hot. No, you turned it off.
Oh, okay, there we go. Clearly, I'm not tech savvy. My name is Dottie Stott. I live at 176 Lagoon Road here in Colwood. And I was wondering if I could request to be put on the agenda for the next council meeting to make a presentation to council about a proposal towards a textile recycling program in Colwood.
Great. I will look to staff. What's the best way for the speaker to communicate that and to get onto the next agenda?
If Mrs. Stott can just leave us her contact information, we'll provide that for you.
You bet. Thank you.
And just so you know, we do have a December 16th special meeting, so we might be able to get it in there. Otherwise, it'll be the new year. We don't? We can't fit it in? Okay, sorry, it doesn't look like
Thanks
we can
for
fit you on
teasing
the
me.
16th.
No problem. That's okay. I totally appreciate it. I had emailed the information, but I'm happy to leave you my... Oh, okay, fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Great. I'll just turn that off. Moving on to Mayor's message. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who attended the Colwood Christmas Light Up. We're proud of the local school choirs. We had Sangster, Wishart, and John Stubbs come out and participate and sing, and they were awesome. We also had several local partners with businesses that made the event possible. We had the Royal Bay Bakery, who did over 600 apple fritters. We had Red Barn Market, who donated over 500 hot dog buns and hot dogs. We had West Shore Park and Rec in here doing several games. I know we had help getting from Councillor Kobayashi getting some hot chocolate, and Ani Group, which was our title sponsor. And so we really appreciate that they stepped up. I'd also like to sincerely thank council as well. It was great to have everyone out and everybody doing hot dogs. Clearly, next year we're going to make sure we do 1,000 hot dogs and not 500 because that seems to be a real selling point. In addition, we are creating more opportunities to get together throughout the holidays. Join us for hot chocolate and caroling on the next 2 Thursdays at Herm Williams Park, where some forest lights have been installed. I think they look great. I know Councillor Logan has mentioned it to me as well. They look great. On the 12th, this Thursday coming up, we're going to have the Royal Bay Secondary Band coming out. And then we also have a community group orchestra band who will also be playing from. So that happens between 6 and 8 o'clock. The Royal Bay students will be there from 6 till 7. And the other band, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the other band's name right now, will be there from 7 to 8. If you missed it, and I don't know how you could, the council was at the Colwood Thrifties singing their hearts out, raising money like no business. And I'd like to really thank council for stepping up and doing that. I'm sure they had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I missed it, but it was enjoyable last year, and hopefully somebody can comment on it and sort of talk about how well that went. A couple of other Christmas events happening within our community this Christmas season. We have the Backpack Project, we have local hampers, we have the CFAX Anonymous, and then we have the Royal Bay Secondary 10,000 Tonight food drive, which will take place this Wednesday, December 11th. So students will be knocking on doors. So if you have any non-perishable goods, please have them ready and please welcome them. And that's always a wonderful evening. There will also be a special meeting of council on December 16th at 6 p.m. for a presentation by Seacliff and Gablecraft about plans for Royal Bay and Royal Beach. And then if you can't get enough of me, which who can't get enough of me, you can listen to the next episode of the West Shore Business Podcast. I'll be recording that this Thursday, and it should be available over the weekend. And you can have a listen to that. And then finally, where did I put it? Oh, darn it. I think I misplaced it somewhere, but, oh, no, I didn't. Here it is. The Grumpy Taxpayers Association. Yes. They today announced that they had their 2020 awards recognizing improvements in governance by utilizing several things. In third place, the award went to, this is the Candy Cane Award. The third place went to the City of Victoria for taking a leadership role in transparency and open governance. The city implemented a council dashboard, which was a powerful tool that allowed taxpayers to easily see how the representative voted on a particular motion. In second place was the District of Oak Bay for developing an interactive budgeting tool to help engage residents in budget planning. And the big winner for this year, our top award this year, goes to the City of Colwood, which focused on long-term planning for infrastructure, roads, sewers, fire halls, recreational facilities, and so on. A huge challenge for every council across Greater Victoria. And the quote is, "It's very unusual for any municipality to take a long-term detailed look at their infrastructure costs for the next 50 years, says Bartlett. But staff at the City of Colwood, in an award-winning report entitled Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan 2019 to 2068, did just that. The plan estimates the city will need to spend close to $425 million over the next 50 years to maintain its municipal assets valued at $350 million. To avoid a sudden and large tax increase to residents, the report outlines various financial strategies to maintain the funding infrastructure on a regular basis." So that's a very nice award to get from the grumpy taxpayers, because they're usually quite grumpy.
Did we get candy canes?
The candy canes are supposedly reportedly on the way somewhere, sitting in Santa's sled, because I don't have them. Does council have anything they would like to share? No? All right, then we will move on to adoption of the regular meeting of November 25th. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Jensen. Is there any errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of November 4th, 2019. Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Parkinson to receive. Any errors, omissions, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Presentations. We have a presentation by Barbara Yates, who is a resident regarding accessible bus stops. Is she here this evening? Oh, there you are.
Did you just turn it on?
Oh, I just turned it on for you.
Okay.
Very good.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Barbara Yates. I live at 2320 Esther Place in Colwood and have for almost 20 years. I'm here to speak about an accessible bus stop in our neighborhood that would fulfill requirements for all of our neighbors and the people coming and going from Colwood. Can someone instruct me on, is just the arrows? Okay. There we go. So what I did was I went out into our community and I looked at different bus stops that looked like they were in the middle of nowhere. And this one here is out in front of Royal Roads. And there's views both sides, up and down the street. There's very little community across. There's no way to access that particular bus stop. There's no lights, there's no crosswalk. That was one example. That's the same view. Then there's this one further down on Machosen Road, past Royal Bay, that is in the middle of nowhere. Both bus stops are across from each other, and I was trying to come up with some logic as to why these ones were done. I know this particular bus stop services a small community behind it. I didn't take a picture of the mailboxes to account for how many homes were in that community. This is the picture of the bus stops to and from nowhere, and the gravel pit behind it. And this is the one I'm requesting to be accessible. It is in the corner of Kelly and Pickford on the north side of Kelly. This is a view from across the street. Then you have views up and down the street. You can see that there is a sidewalk on the other side. Once you cross the crosswalk, this is the view that you get. And if you were an individual relying on a tactile way of finding the bus stop, you would go right past that bus stop because there's no way of identifying it if you had low vision. If you had to use a cane, also when there is, sorry, this is the view going into the crosswalk that's behind it. So what I did was I went back into the OCP and I copy and pasted, some of the things. And one of the things was to work with BC Transit to improve transit stops by maintaining high quality infrastructure, including sidewalks leading to bus stops, crosswalks near bus stops, and accessible curb letdowns and lighting. This particular bus stop, when it's dark out, you can't see. The farthest corner is where the light lamp standard is. That bus stop is completely dark. This particular bus stop also is a school district bus pickup for both Royal Bay and for Dunsmuir. Now, when you look at this particular bus stop, if you're an individual that has mobility issues, it's not convenient. You literally can't find the bus stop. And as I said before, this is a school district bus stop. When it rains, and we live on the wet coast, there is a huge puddle that will extend from the post that holds the bus stop sign all the way out to the shoulder. So there's physically no way of getting or accessing that bus stop. You have to either stand in front of it or behind it. And my son, who used to take that bus stop, was passed up a number of times because it was dark out because it's raining, and the transit driver didn't physically see him there. He no longer uses that stop. He has moved into Victoria. This particular bus stop not only is a school bus stop, it services the 39, the 51, and the 62, the 39 and the 51. The 39 goes to Camosun and to the Juan de Fuca Exchange. The 51 goes to UVic as well as to the Juan de Fuca Exchange, where a lot of people get off and head on to the 50 into downtown. I started this process way back in January of 2018, asking for an accessible bus stop, and this is the culmination of it all. It was identified by ADKI, but it did not make the original list of 21 bus stops to be prioritized. 14 I know have been completed, 7 remain, and what I'm asking is that of the 7 that remain, that this particular bus stop be made accessible, be put on that list so that it can be done sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So where we're at with this is we're going to be, as council, we're going to be discussing this 8.5 of the agenda tonight. But and so it'll come back. But does council have any questions strictly for the presenter? It's time? Okay, then that's great. Thank you. All right. Moving on to new business. 8.1, West Shore Skateboard Park. There is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan.
Second.
Second by Councillor Baxter. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 8.2, 2006 Souk Road License of Occupancy Agreement. This was also a recommendation from the December 2nd Committee of the Whole meeting.
I'll move that recommendation.
Oh, sorry, yes.
One item that was missed when we adopted the agenda, Mayor Martin, the applicant has asked to withdraw the application for this license of occupation. And my apologies, we should have had you amend the agenda to remove this item earlier.
All right, so just strike it then. So we'll just strike 8.2. All right, thank you. Moving on to 8.3 then. Potential vending regulations on municipal land. This is again a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole of December 2nd.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.4, short-term rentals. This is a recommendation as well from this December 2nd Committee of the Whole meeting.
Move the recommendation. Second.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.5, this is the bus stop improvement project. Ms. Yates, you thought that this was going to take you a long time, didn't you?
Thanks, Marcy. All right, so we've prepared a brief PowerPoint here. So the last time we were before you discussing this project was with Q3 reporting. And at that time, we had reported that this project was underway, was not yet complete, and at that point, we were over budget. So I'm just going to take a minute just to provide a bit more background information, and feel free to interrupt me with any questions, or we can get to those at the end. So this was a project that did initiate in 2018, and the intention was to install bus benches at a number of locations throughout the city. And the driver for this project at the time was that a third party who was maintaining and providing bus benches for the city, we had ended our agreement with that party. And so with that drove a number of the locations. As well, the city made the decision to install new benches at some locations. And so this project started in 2018. It was not complete. It carried forward into this year. And as of third quarter, of the 21 work orders that the city had issued, we completed works on 14 of those locations. And based on that work, we had already spent just shy of $103,000. And so we did highlight this during the third quarter. One, to acknowledge that we were seeking additional funding approval for the overage, but also highlighting that we were seeking additional budget for the works remaining. And those are the 7 locations that we have listed on the third appendix to the, or the second appendix to the report before you. And so we'll just take a minute. We did start to talk about this at the third quarter, but there was a number of reasons. Primarily, this was an excellent example of poor project budgeting. So the scope of the project back in 2018 was not completely defined for these 21 locations. Also, we were doing this work in-house using our public works crews. And so every time we were mobilizing and demobilizing these crews with competing priorities around the city, we were inefficiently using this labor, and as a result, the labor costs were driven up on this project. Also, the budget at the time that it was compiled didn't factor in all of the site preparation costs that arose for a number of these locations. So that budget was it within the city's operating budget and should have been allocated over to this capital budget. And so with this report before you, we have reviewed the 7 remaining locations and prepared a much more accurate cost estimate. I will highlight that the chart that's within the report before you did not pull in the 5% contingency, but we are estimating that the total works remaining for the 7 identified bus stops is approximately $40,000. And so we do have a recommendation drafted before you, and we do anticipate that we can complete the works for those locations for $40,000. And so we have highlighted here just a couple of the bus stops where the improvement works have been done, and then we have the 7 locations that the city has proposed to finish the remaining works. And I will highlight that the bus stop that the resident made mention of has not been incorporated into these 7, but can certainly be considered either in addition or in place of one of the existing. So this here is one of the 7 remaining locations on Bexhill Road. We also have a stop on Carindale Road. This one here along Goldstream Avenue. At Lagoon Road and Heatherbell. This one just outside of City Hall here. Again, further down Wishart, across from Stornoway. And lastly, Wishart across from Owens. So we did see support from the committee when we last spoke about this item, but upon further review, we are seeking funding of up to $40,000, not $35,000. And here's the recommendation before you tonight. So we are looking for authorization of funding for our budget overrun for the works that have been complete in finalizing the 14 locations. We are looking for direction to proceed with the remaining locations, and we are looking to establish a $40,000 budget for completion of this work in 2020.
Thank you. I'm going to go to council in a moment. I just have one question for staff. If this council chose to, instead of addition by subtraction and get rid of a stop to do what Ms. Yates mentioned, rough math suggests that each one of these stops is costing us roughly about $6,000. So if instead of us taking one of the stops off and instead do 22 stops instead of 21 stops, would that ask be roughly about $46,000 then?
Roughly.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, I'm going to support the motion here, but I just wonder if we should amend it then asking for the increased amount. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to pitch that we increase the amount to $46,000, and I will move that motion. And then I do have a
comment
questions.
after that. Thank you. So unfortunately, I can't go with hot might. So I got a mover. Do I have a seconder? Oh no, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Second by Councillor Jensen. Excuse me, Councillor Logan. And then we'll go back to discussion on that motion. Correct? Is that what I'm doing? Okay. Did you want to discuss it further? Okay. Let me. No, I can shift you right. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. How were these locations identified? Can someone help me out with that? Like, was there a third party that helped us with this, or is this Ouija board magic? Or
Yes?
You're red.
Yeah, I am red.
Try clicking it off and clicking back one. There you go. Now try.
Through the
You need to stop turning it on and off because the problem is because I'm turning it on. So go ahead.
through the chair, I understand that the initial indication and impetus for the budget was about the Pattison agreement for signage and installation, and that the selected stops were and I feel free to correct me, but from what I understand, the selected stops were based on the replacement of the advertising sign with a specific bench pattern, and that's how the stops were picked. I'm not aware of any formal order. I am aware from speaking with the resident who did an excellent job presenting tonight that she was and spoke to being on that list primarily, but because it wasn't a stop where we had a Pattison agreement signboard for advertising, it just got pushed off because of the need to replace those signs. I would say that there's no factor other than budget for increasing it or adding another stop to the mix.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Dean.
thank you.
Okay, excuse me, Councillor Jensen.
I think that answers it. So it's not like this has been through IACD to identify, our top 20 hit list or anything like that. So if I'm getting the sense that's not the case. So if that's not the case, then there's no reason why we couldn't add or delete if we so choose. I would prefer adding $6,000. I think it's a small amount to get on with a lovely bus stop.
Thank you. I'm going to go to our CAO next.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page 1 of the report, on the second last paragraph, the last sentence, further new locations were determined by council working in conjunction with the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues. And so it's not wrong that we started with the locations where we were placing bus stops that were being removed. The additional locations were chosen in conjunction with that group.
Councillor Baxter.
I wanted to ask, as I understand it, these 7 that we're budgeting for are actually from last year's budget, or perhaps even originally a year before. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the question I want to ask is, why wouldn't we budget some more for 2020, these being part of an old budget? Is there a reason why we shouldn't do that?
Sorry, now I'm assuming you're asking through staff. To
Any
staff? or-
staff member?
No particular reason. This is really commenting on the project as it's currently being established and defined, but certainly no reason that. I'll turn it over to the director.
I think it's really quite. Am I on? Yeah. I think it's no.
Yeah, you're on.
I think it's really quite exciting to be able to have the opportunity to retable a list in concert with the modern IACT standing, because there's a whole bunch of changes that typically happen about how we view accessibility, and to refresh that list to
Good. I'm turning everybody off. Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry. My apologies. I am still figuring this out. Yes, absolutely. Councillor Baxter, hold on.
It's not as good as.
No, clearly I am no Councillor Kobayashi.
Okay, I would then move an amendment to the motion, increasing the ask to add a further 7 bus stops in the 2020 budget, chosen by IACT working with staff.
Okay. And that's a friendly amendment to the original motion. You're
Yes.
just adding it. Okay, so I have an amendment to the motion, which would be just adding, I'm sorry, could you say it one
Adding,
more
instead
time?
of 1, adding 7.
Okay. We are debating on just that motion, so hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to remove you all. Well, is there debate on the motion on the, okay, then I need to.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of Councillor Baxter's amendment. I don't think that we want to pull numbers and budgets out of the air at last minute. I mean, we have a budgeting process. We have all sorts of things that need to get done to all of a sudden say, let's go find 6 more bus stops to build. We had an excellent presentation tonight. I can support that one, but I don't like your way of deciding how many bus stops might be appropriate next year.
Yashi.
I don't know if the number's right, to be supportive of the number. It just comes down to, what I've been saying. I keep on harping on it's the priorities, and what's important. I'm supportive of the initial motion and amended, but right now, is it 7 and 7 or is it another 21? I don't know. And to me, I'm looking to staff for a recommendation on how we do the 2020 budget as far as what capital projects we should be doing, and we prioritize it. So maybe it's 21, maybe it's 14, I don't know. So I'm saying the same thing as you, Councillor Parkinson, but until I understand what all the capital projects that we have facing us, and we can discuss it and have it prioritized, this number seems arbitrary, I guess, right now, Michael. But I agree with what you want to do. So that's all my comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some concerns about the length of time that might take consultation and back and forth, and I worry that might just get lost in translation. I'm entirely comfortable with bat and cleanup on this original project, the 7 that are outstanding, adding the 8, and let's get on with it and put some finish on that previous project, and then we can look forward, is my thinking.
I completely support everything Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Kobayashi said. I was assuming that what we're doing here, what my amendment was about, what the original motion was about, is that we're putting these things forward to the 2020 budget, knowing that anything in that proposed budget can get cut. As far as I know, we don't have any pre-approved items, nor are we likely to approve any pre-approved items. So that was not my intent. But I would like to speak against simply adding this one for which there was a presentation, because that is encouraging, decision by presentation. So there's probably other people out there who need a stop at least as much, perhaps more, we don't know. But if we're going to proceed with projects based on whenever we have a presentation and ignore the other perhaps competing needs, I think that's a poor way to choose our projects. I know that Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Kobayashi, even though they never actually catch the bus, have great sympathy with everybody who does, and they would probably support an additional 7 stops, making a total of 14, if the budget will allow, but that's yet to be decided. So I'd like to continue with the proposed amendment.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Just through the chair, this question to you, Jen, and it's the budget itself. I'm just trying to figure out, so have we learned some lessons? So how confident are you with this, the new ask and the budget adjustment? So could you answer the question? Thank you.
So yes, we've certainly learned some lessons. One of the key implications here is that the city doesn't have sufficient tools so when it comes to our work order process, and how we're integrating that information with our general ledger, for example, and how we're integrating that information with our budgeting. It's currently all a very manual process. So that is something that you will be seeing during budget deliberations, is a funding request from staff, as we look to not only revising that process, but also implementing the software to better assist us with budgeting and with recording this information. And I just wanted to take a moment. This recommendation before you, it is drafted with the intention, staff are recommending that council make a decision on establishing this budget and that we would proceed with completing this work. If you would prefer to propose a budget to be considered during deliberations, that is a slightly different recommendation than what is drafted before you.
Thank you. I am not going to go to Councillor Baxter yet because I need a seconder on the amendment. Do I have a seconder on the amendment? If not, then it's the amendment is not forwarded. So we will go back to the main motion, which is what Councillor Jensen moved. So I am now back onto the main motion. I am not on the amendment any longer. And I will go to the list, which will be first Councillor Baxter. And this is on the main motion.
I'll keep it short. I'll propose a different amendment, which I think meets everybody's needs, and that is that the 40,000 budget for the completion of last year's project be approved, and that we ask staff to bring forward another 7 bus stops to be fixed up for consideration in the 2020 budget.
So presently, Councillor Baxter, we actually have a motion that says that the budget is $46,000.
Oh, sorry,
moved by Councillor Jensen.
Yeah.
And so what you're looking to do with the recommendation that has already been moved by staff, your amendment really is just regarding the budget for 2020. So what is the one line that you would like to add into the budget, into this recommendation around budget?
That a further 7 stops be brought forward for consideration in the 2020 budget.
Okay, so there will be an additional line that says, and that an additional 7 stops be brought forward through the 2020 budget deliberations. Do I have a seconder on that amendment? Yes? Okay, so Councillor Parkinson has said he is the seconder, which means I am dropping you all from the list because we are now going to be discussing the amendment. We are not on the main motion. So is there anyone who wishes to speak to the amendment? If so, I will drop you all. Can somebody just put up their hand if they want to discuss the amendment? Okay, I'm dropping you guys.
Thank you, Worship. About the amendment portion, I think it's almost there, Michael, but my concern is if staff reports or somebody reports that we need 21 bus stops, we've painted ourselves into a corner, so I think it's a little bit restrictive. How about we just hear a report that tells us potentially how many bus stops for next year? That's it.
Then I will go to Councillor Kobayashi.
Okay, so thanks for stealing my thunder. I just want to make sure I'm clear on the motion, though. The motion is the amendment to it's 46,000. So it's all those recommendation lines, right? Plus what has been amended by Councillor Baxter, but now amended by.
No. So I will help you. So it's everything. One conversation, John. It's everything there, plus, and that 7 additional stops be reviewed for the 2020 budget. Or roughly, or help me, staff, whatever the motion is.
In addition to the $6,000 that were added to pay
Yes.
the additional funds, and I just want to, now that I have your attention, you asked earlier, is staff more confident in the remaining 7 stops? We have gone out to each of those stops, and we are confident in the budgets that we provided to you, the 40,000 to get those complete. The additional 6, the math on that approach, we don't have the same level of confidence, and so we will endeavor to deliver a stop at the average cost of the other 7, but at this juncture, we cannot comment specifically on any extraordinary costs relative to what were potentially described as storm issues in that area.
So before Councillor Kobayashi, you do have the mic, but just on your statement then, if we were to remove one of the stops, so we minus the stop and added this stop, are you saying that the 40,000 would not be appropriate either?
So again, commenting on our confidence relative to the 7 stops in Appendix 2 in the report, we have looked at those stops and done specific budget estimates for those. We are hopeful that with the $6,000 allocated, which is an average of the other stops, that we could deliver an additional stop. But I'm just trying to provide caution. There may be extraordinary costs relative to a specific location that are unknown to us at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I do understand the motion then. So in essence, what I'm hearing, I believe, is the question of, after all that, how do we go forward? Because there's, a finite number of stops throughout Colwood. And I guess maybe the better ask, maybe it's better in a separate motion, is that we do have a plan going forward. So say there's another 100. Well, we're not going to be able to do all 100 in one budget year because the cost would be just too high. To me, I think what our taxpayers would be looking for from us would be a plan. So, maybe over the next 5 years, say we have 100 to do, and we do 20 per year, and plan it that way, and have staff come back with that recommendation to us. I think maybe that's the better way of going forward. I'd like to hear your comments before I make a motion.
Councillor Baxter.
With respect to what you just said, Councillor Kobayashi, I think we would have to vote on the amendment before you could make a different motion, unless we're going to amend the amendment again. Are we okay to do a friendly change to the amendment, just so that we try and incorporate everybody's wishes in this? Because I think from the point of view of budget certainty, we might be better sticking with the $40,000 budget and asking staff to bring back a number, as suggested by Councillor Jensen, a number of stops for consideration in the budget for 2020. And then we're not tying staff to any particular number, and they can all be properly estimated before we actually talk about numbers.
So presently we are in the amendment. So unless you are making another amendment to the amendment, if you're making an amendment to the amendment, I can move that forward. Otherwise, I will go to Councillor Logan because he wishes to comment.
Whatever process you think is best, but I think it would be best, taking into account everybody's comments, if we stick with exactly what is on that sheet and include the $40,000 budget and add that we ask staff to bring forward a number of stops for the 2020 budget.
So I do think Councillor Logan is going to say something helpful.
Okay.
Well, don't give me that much credit. Thank you, Worship. This is becoming very confusing. So with all due respect to my colleagues, I wonder if we should actually separate the issue for the 2020 budget from the motion that Councillor Jansen made, dealing specifically with the remaining 7 and the 1 additional. So we can deal with that and then deal with any recommendation towards the.
So,
2020.
Councillor Logan, are you suggesting, and I'm not sure how, he's suggesting to sever, and how would I sever the motion?
Currently, you have an amending motion on the table, so my recommendation to you would be to withdraw the amending motion and proceed with the main motion, which was basically what you see before you on the screen, increased to $6,000 to also include the Kelly Road bus stop for the additional $6,000. So you're voting on the main motion, which sits before you, adjusted to $46,000 to also include the Kelly Road bus stop.
Great, thank you. Councillor Baxter, after hearing that, are you willing to withdraw your amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw my amendment and just.
Sorry, hold on.
This as originally recommended by staff, and then we can deal with all the other
Well,
complications separately.
right now, I just need you to withdraw, because then I'll come back to the main motion
I'll
and you can
withdraw.
discuss. Thank you. Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn, the amendment to it. So I am back on the main motion again. And Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm going to support this motion. I don't have an issue with bumping budgets because we had one excellent, in my opinion, presentation. A presentation that perhaps might have pointed out that maybe the 21 weren't the top 21 that needed to be done, possibly. Who knows? Let's not go back over that. Let's get her done. I appreciate the comments of the CAO about this one may be a little different number than the others, but so what? You know, we had an overrun to deal with in last year's budget. If this one goes over by a couple $1,000s, we'll have an overrun to deal with. We won't like it. We'll deal with it. But I think before we go down the path of a whole bunch more of these things, we're going to have to stop and have a look. I mean, we're frankly looking at a 60% over budget by the time we're finished these. And maybe we should be looking at tendering them out or in lump sums or some efficient way. I heard what we heard about perhaps there were some costs that people thought were coming out of a different budget, a whole bunch of things. But frankly, honestly, it's not good enough to be 60% over budget. And, you know, and there's reasons, and I get it. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but I think we do have to be cautious. So before we go down the road of 7 or 20 or 100 more bus stops, let's really think about the efficient and correct way to deliver them. But as far as these ones, happy to go forward, and I was swayed by the presentation tonight, so I'll be supporting the motion.
Excuse me, to our CAO. Oh, okay, never mind. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting the recommendation. I think the person that made the presentation did it, went about it the right way, and that corridor is active. It's busy, but she also did identify another issue with that particular stop, and that's the lighting aspect. And so, what I would, I guess, a question through Your Worship to staff is, perhaps this stop would be better suited or towards a partnership with transit to install a shelter that would be lit. So we would indeed pour the pad, but instead of installing a bench, we would encourage transit or work with transit to install a shelter with some lighting. So taking care of a couple of issues that Ms. Yates brought up. And so I guess through you, Your Worship, staff, how could we make that happen? Is there a process? And would you recommend an amendment to make that happen as opposed to going straight for the bench? I'm just seeking your...
I'm going to actually speak to this.
Okay.
Because I sit on the BC Transit Board, the Victoria Commission, we have a schedule on the commission of which stops, and we actually have a 2-year cycle. So we've already picked the stops, and we have a combination of funding that some of it is paid through the commission, through the BC Transit. Some of it is actually directly paid through Pattison. They're responsible for some of the stops because of the ads. What I can do is on your behalf and on council's behalf, I can easily bring it up at a commission level standpoint, and I can see if I can get one of those stops prioritized. So I'll do it on my side.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So saying that, I'm going to actually call the question. So we are on this motion. Does anybody need clarification? No? Okay, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Plus, yeah, it's this motion, which includes the 6,000. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Councillor Baxter, did you have a second motion?
I'd like to move.
Oh, sorry. I have to. There you go.
I move that we ask council to bring forward a number of new bus stops to be improved during 2020 budget discussions, and that they provide advice on the best way to construct them to provide budget certainty. Sorry, change it.
You accidentally said council, but you meant staff.
sorry, I
for
meant
staff to
staff.
do the work. And I think we all understood your intent. Comments from staff regarding the motion?
While council is considering the emotion, if we could bring further clarity into an assessment ranking, whether that be based on ridership, safe routes to school, the accessibility standards, lighting options, places where we could fit a transit stop, we can bring that all into a table. That'll categorize it based on council, how they wish to categorize it. We may be able to do that live if we're so savvy. So just a suggestion to provide more detail in the new motion being proposed, please.
Great, thank you. Council, is there any discussion on the oh, I'm sorry, I need a seconder to that motion. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Kobayashi has seconded the motion that Councillor Baxter moved. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Parkinson?
I believe that staff were asking for some guidance to be included in that motion. So do we want to rank these things based on accessibility issues, ridership issues, lighting issues, ease of construction, etc.? So I think they were asking for that. I'm unfortunately not sitting here with a magic answer, but they've asked, and I think to send them away without some guidance perhaps means they're spinning their wheels. They got lots to do.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Parkinson. I'm going to go to our CAO.
Thank you. Worship Administration will bring onboarding and lighting data from BC Transit. We'll also bring any advice that we have with respect to universal access.
Thank you.
And there'll be consultation.
Oh, no, go ahead. You just got to be patient with me.
And we'll consult with IACT.
Great. All right, then I will call the question on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposed. Moving on to 8.6, which is the parking primer regarding Royal Bay. This is just a report that needs to be received. Does staff wish to comment on this one? If not, then I'll go to council. Council, this report is just here for information purposes. So, does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, then Councillor Parkinson.
I appreciate it's just here for information and it's informative, but I guess begs a bigger question of why. Why are we being informed? Or, I mean, it's interesting.
Sure. Does staff have a comment on why it's on tonight? Go ahead.
Parking within Royal Bay seems to be a hot topic, and where I felt that this council may not have the complete picture is where previous councils or time has expressed variances or brought forward variances in relation to the site. So Councillor Parkinson is correct. This is provided for information to provide that background to you as up to date as presently possible.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Kobayashi in one moment. Can I just procedurally, since this is just a report for information purposes, do I need a motion of anything? Can I just move on after? Because it's been received because it's on our agenda. Okay, thank you.
I was just going to move receipt.
Oh, then thank you. All right, well, I guess we'll do that. Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Logan to receive the report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Doug. 8.7, this is Sandra Russell regarding the corporate communication, it's the draft City of Colwood 2019 to 23 strategic plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to just provide a brief overview of the draft strategic plan on behalf of my colleagues, because it really is a group effort, including you. So basically, building a vibrant, responsive, and prosperous community is an ongoing process that involves planning, evaluating, adjusting, and improving. So this strategic plan, which is on the agenda tonight, it provides the guideposts. It articulates priority areas where the city recognizes the need for more attention. The plan was initiated through council workshops in 2018, refined in 2019, and staff added resource requirements and proposed tactics. The priorities are guided by the direction established in the official community plan. So as you see on this little process chart, the official community plan provides the guidance. The strategic plan identifies priority areas. That in turn outlines service plans for the city and structures the financial plan. Ultimately, that's how service gets delivered. So it's a coordinated effort, everything working in sync. So the 4 areas of focus that have been described in the draft strategic plan are these 4: mobility, prosperity, governance, and vibrancy. It's not intended to be a list of everything the city does. These are, as I said, priority areas where council has identified a gap between where we are and where the official community plan describes we should be based on the needs and expectations of the community as expressed in the OCP. Each of the priority areas identifies targets, measurable outcomes we'll strive to achieve by 2023, strategies for achieving those targets, and tactics, so specific actions, projects, policies, investments, or programs set on a timeline over the next 4 years. So the first of the goal areas involves mobility and how the city will strive to enhance quality of life for residents and visitors and commuters by creating a connected network of streets, cycling routes, sidewalks, and routes that work for all ages and abilities. We'll advocate for regional transportation improvements, and walking, cycling, and transit will be considered before new roads or road expansions. Some of the targets include increasing our transit mode share by 10%, increasing our pedestrian mode share by 5%, our cycling mode share by 5%, and establishing a baseline and targets for the length of bike lane per dwelling and the length of cycling route per dwelling, so that we have those guideposts to work toward. Some of the tactics for mobility include measuring congestion, so we know how to deal with it, reviewing the design of some priority outlined roads, creating sidewalk and cycling plans, advocating for the acceleration of public transit improvements, and engaging the public on the concept of a West Shore passenger ferry. Around prosperity, we're talking about promoting the prosperity of residents, businesses, and the city as a whole, through local business and investment, but also quality of life considerations for residents so that they have the resources available and the time to recreate, see to their wellness, their education, their employment, and their housing needs. So some of the targets around prosperity are about metrics and baseline data for measuring household prosperity. And then the other business targets are around adding 50,000 square feet of developed retail floor area by 2023, 6.5 acres of industrial land by 2023, and 963 new dwellings. So it's both sides of the picture for prosperity. Some of the tactics talk about creating tax-based diversification targets, planning for public realm improvements, measuring the municipal cost of new development, and updating the Land Use Bylaw. Around governance, we're talking about clear, honest communications, the courage to make decisions that align with the OCP, responsible financial management, exceptional customer service, and efficient and effective service delivery. So some of the targets around good governance include connecting expectations for program and service delivery to the annual budget, establishing engagement metrics, making sure reserves fund future infrastructure improvements, and reducing our GHG emissions. The targets focus on building service levels around resident expectations, engaging residents, reviewing tax, fee, and payment in lieu of taxes, planning for infrastructure needs such as roads, sewers, and stormwater, and of course, reducing GHG emissions. The fourth goal area is around vibrancy. So that includes things like creating welcoming and interesting public spaces that encourage recreational, social, cultural, and heritage opportunities. Some of the areas of focus would be the waterfront, city parks and trails, local heritage sites, community events, public realm improvements, and beautification of boulevards and streetscapes. Targets for this goal area are establishing metrics to measure individual and community benefits of arts, recreation, culture, placemaking. And tactics focus on a parks master plan and parks management plans, a waterfront master plan, beautification plans, performing arts concepts, West Shore Recreation Agreement, community event plans and volunteer plans and cultural assessments. And so what you're here to consider tonight about this draft strategic plan is whether we are ready to take it to the public for hearing from them, hearing their feedback. So with council's approval tonight, it would be added to our Let's Talk Colwood platform with a survey asking for which areas people feel have the highest priority for them, where we might have missed the mark, whether targets aim too high or whether they haven't reached high enough, those kinds of questions. And we can assess too whether we need to involve other engagement tools, sounding boards in local shops, engagement booths out in the community where people are. And of course, staff would present an engagement summary when the report comes back to council in probably late January. So there you go. I think you have the whole plan in front of you. This was just a brief overview to give you a sense of it.
Thank you. I will look to council. Does council have any questions? Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start by moving the recommendation.
Thank you. So I moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Logan.
And just a comment, it looks beautiful. I'm going to have a closer look in the paper form, as I discussed with you, and I'm sure it'll be well received by us and by the community, and I look forward to getting some feedback.
Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson, or no, excuse me, Councillor Kobayashi.
I just want to compliment you on the job you did here, Sandra. And I also see the CEO's writing. I've got to know his writing well enough now. So I see your fingerprints all over it too. So very well done to the staff. I'm really proud of this document. You know, we could sit here and wordsmith this for another year, but it is ready for the public as far as I'm concerned. So I'm fully supportive of what you want to do. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
I hate it when everything I have to say Kobayashi says first. But yes, nice work. Yes, I did also sense the hand of the CAO waving over this, which is what we like. Good. That's what he's there for. Just trying to understand the process. This will go to the public. They will have a few comments, maybe a lot, and come back. And as I think it was Doug again mentioned, we could nitpick little things forever on this thing. Presumably, we hear comments from the public. We may have a couple things that we think are worth discussing, and then we button it up and say that is our strategic plan. Hopefully by the end of January. Well, that would be good news. Job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Then what I will do then is call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, we are now at 8.8, which is Selina, our Director of Corporate Services, regarding council appointments for 2020. We have a motion in front of us. Any discussion? Or excuse me, sure. Councillor Parkinson's going to move it. Thank you. Second by Councillor Kobayashi. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 8.9, this is regarding, we have our fire chief here this evening to answer questions. This is a UBCM Fire Department Equipment and Training Grant. This basically, it's a grant that needs to be applied for. Fire chief, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, member of council. The report before you is outlining a request for a supportive resolution by council in support of a UBCM training grant that we've already put in for. Unfortunately, I did get a call back from UBCM, and they identified that there was one box that we did not check, and that is resolution by council for support enclosed with application. So just to bring you up to date, UBCM has allowed funds to be dispersed to volunteer and composite fire departments for the purposes of training facilities, and that is to cover hard costs or hard assets up to a maximum of $25,000. So we have identified in our training program the need for a simulated structure made from that we can construct using shipping containers out the back of the fire hall in our training ground. So we have applied for that, and we're hoping for a resolution of support for the grant. So I will also like to point out, though, that we are, since we have identified this as a requirement moving forward for our training program, if we are unsuccessful in getting the grant application, which should be announced sometime towards the end of March, we will be putting this forward as a supplemental request for capital as part of our budget cycle for 2020.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I do have a motion by Councillor Kobayashi. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Logan. Is there any discussion regarding this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 8.10. This is regarding West Shore Park and Rec agreement extensions. Our CAO, do you have anything?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration are seeking council's authorization to extend the 3 agreements. That's the owners, operating and maintenance, and members agreements through to February 29th, 2020, which is a 2-month extension. They're currently set to expire December 31st of this year.
Great, thank you. May I have my motion? Oh, thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Parkinson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposes. Moving on to 8.11, council discussion regarding council chambers configuration. I asked for this to be put on. Council, really quickly, we have 3 quick options here. Or did you want to discuss this? You're looking at me like, why am I taking over this? We have 3 quick options. We have for the last year been trying to figure out the best configuration for council. One of the issues that has been in the past with this specific configuration is that it's very flat and it's very hard to see each other. We do have a better sound system now, so I'm hoping at the very least we can hear each other. The 3 options that I'm proposing, and I would just like some direction so that staff have direction, is 1, we can live with this for this year and just accept it. 2, we can look at being creative and reconfigure the present furniture we have and try and figure out something else if this council does not like this configuration. Or 3, we can give direction to staff to look at budgeting in 2020 for new tables that would meet our actual need if this did not meet our needs. So we're looking for direction right now. Or I'm looking for direction right now. What does council wish to do? Is council happy with it being flat like this? Would council like us to work on the configuration and stick with this same furniture, or would they like to look at a new configuration with new furniture? And I will go to Councillor Baxter first.
Yeah, I'm not happy with the current configuration. I find myself sitting like this, rather in the orientation we used to sit at the beginning of our term. And then when this chair is occupied and Doug leans forward and then Councillor Day leans forward, I can't see you at all. And this sound system does deal with that to some extent, but I still think the original point that this is a meeting is supposed to be a conversation between us. We should be looking at each other.
Okay, thank you. Before I leave you, Councillor Baxter, since you are not happy with this configuration, can you please, are you happy with us keeping the same furniture that we have, or would you like staff to look at budgeting for 2020?
I would like to keep the same furniture to the greatest extent possible, but I would say the configuration we started this term with there were some problems with conversing with staff. So I'm feeling that somewhere halfway between what we have now and what we had then is probably the best we can do.
Okay, thank you. I will then go to Councillor Kobayashi.
I will have to concur with you, Michael. I think we should try to do the best we can with the furniture that we have. I just don't want to see us spending more money unnecessarily. I do find this configuration terrible because I know the boys are flipping me over there and I can't tell. So I'd like to see them, look them eye to eye, you know, so I definitely will concur with what Michael has just suggested.
Okay, thank you. I will take that as direction. We will look at new configuration and we will attempt to be as cost effective and efficient as possible. So thank you. Moving on then to bylaws, unless there's somebody else who wants to comment. Okay, moving on then to bylaws. Bylaw number 1788, Land Use Amendment 3510 Wishart Road, third reading only. Third. Thank you. Seconded by, so moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, I'm going to start my discussions with an apology to the rest of you, to staff, to the applicants, and I'm going to try to put it down to my learning curve. I suspect my comments on this matter come out of sync, wrong time. You know, it kind of passed through second reading, and I didn't realize there was nothing then till the public hearing. So I have some concerns. I guess now is my chance to say so. And again, it comes down. Firstly, was if I could. The traffic report, the number one recommendation of the Watt traffic report was that Wishart Road driveways provide adequate space for vehicles to turn around so they're not required to back onto Wishart Road. I think they had some concerns about sight distance. So I'd like to amend the recommendation to include clause 10.31.5.5 to add driveways onto Wishart Road be constructed to ensure sufficient parking places and the ability for vehicles to turn around to eliminate the need to back onto Wishart Road when exiting the driveway.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Second. It's moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion on the motion, on the amendment. And before I begin, I just want to make sure you guys aren't worried by that. We're good? I saw you two talking. So.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. If you would like to amend the bylaw as it sat at second reading, it would be cleaner if you put forward an amending motion for that and then a motion to give it third as amended.
So we are in, but so do we need to rescind second reading then?
No.
We're in third right now.
Yes, you've got a mover and a seconder for third reading.
Yes.
To do it cleaner, you would be advised to simply put forward a motion to make an amendment to the bylaw, and then the next motion would be that the bylaw be given third reading as amended.
Okay. So I will first of all ask that Councillor Parkinson withdraw from the original motion so that we can just do it the way.
Sounds, yes. Okay.
Thank you. And then, and help me, I'm sorry, say it one more time.
So now we would need a mover and a seconder for any change you would like to make to the bylaw as it sat at second reading.
As it sat at second reading. Okay. And then Councillor Parkinson.
Okay. Well, I will. I have a couple, so I'll carry on.
Oh no, sorry. Hold on. So we're still dealing with your first concern, your first issue. So your first issue, I just did it wrong.
Yeah.
So now we're doing it on second. So all we're doing is adding that before second. But you're going to add things to it now?
Well, I did one. I also had one on the.
Okay. If you want to add stuff, then. Sir. Okay. Hold on, then, Michael. Go ahead. Point of order.
As suggested by Councillor Logan with his vast experience during the last discussion, I think splitting your various proposals into additional amendments might make the process a lot cleaner.
Okay. I'm going to look to staff, and I see two hands up, so I'm going to go with our CAO first, and then if we need more staff direction.
Sorry, I would agree. I think that if there's a discussion to add an amendment with respect to driveways onto Wishart, that should be considered and voted on in advance of the next issue.
So, Councillor Parkinson, did you want to make your first motion? Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that I have to let you do it. Oh, no, I like this power.
I would like to amend the recommendation to include clause 10.31.5.5 to add driveways onto Wishart Road be constructed to ensure sufficient parking places and the ability for vehicles to turn around to eliminate the need to back onto Wishart Road when exiting the driveway.
And I'm going to, before I ask for a seconder, I'm just going to look at the staff. You're content with that motion? Okay, seconder? Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Baxter. This is on the motion, on the amendment. Councillor Logan, do you wish to speak to the amendment? Okay. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I'm being challenged about the appropriateness of this motion because the bylaw is a land use bylaw. So I wonder if Councillor Parkinson's motion is more appropriate at another time, as opposed to deciding what the land use should be.
Thank you, through the chair, through your worship. Thank you very much, Councillor Logan. That was one of the matters that I was trying to raise my hand to suggest. The land use bylaw is the land use bylaw, describing how the land should be met in terms of density. An amendment like this, not to suggest that it's inappropriate to amend the land use bylaw, but it may be cleaner and simpler to instruct staff to include such a provision in the development agreement as it's resolved by council, in which case we would take the matter as a resolution, as considered as forward, not amending the zoning bylaw so specifically, and we would be incorporating into the development agreement, and it would be.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Yes. Sorry.
A follow-up question. Thank you, Brent. Through you to our Director of Corporate Services. If we made a bunch of amendments at third reading, would that trigger us having to go back to public hearing?
Through the mayor. The trigger to go back to a public hearing is a significant change to the bylaw as it's at its second reading. The bylaw is presented to the public at second reading, so it cannot be altered significantly through amendments. The amendment that's on the table could be further amended to simply preface it with that the development agreement include, instead of that the bylaw be amended to include. And that would, I think, cover off what your intent is.
Okay. I will look to you, Councillor Parkinson. It's your motion.
Hence, perhaps my apology to start this, but I think that's a point that needs to be taken care of. So if the development agreement is the right place, I'm happy to change the motion to suggest that the development agreement include provisions for that.
Okay, thank you. So are you content with the amendment to the motion? All right, so we have an amended motion. So just again, procedurally, since Councillor Parkinson's going to have several amendments, we're going to vote on this amendment, and then I'm going to go back to him. We're going to do another amendment, and then I'm going to eventually get to the main motion. Okay. So on this amendment, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposes. All right. Councillor Parkinson, it's still you.
Thank you. I also note that in the not the other report that was submitted, the Aquatex report, it calls for post-rezoning habitat creation to be reviewed by 2 primary reptile scientific advisors. And that's probably a good thing, but again, since we don't know what they say, we don't know what it means. So I'm going to suggest that the development agreement require that if recommendations of the scientific advisors differ materially from recommendations of the Aquatex report, the rezoning proposal be returned to council for further consideration.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Staff, do you have any comment? You can say no.
Sorry, I do, I guess, I'm just trying to think through the last bit of that motion, rather than the development proposal, because at this juncture, I believe those inspections would occur post-development? Post-rezoning, and so I just return to council chambers for consideration would allow, I think, for a cleaner approach.
Okay, so, and I've heard a friendly amendment, you're fine with the, any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposes. Okay. Is that it? Councilor Parkinson? Okay. I am back onto the main motion then. So main motion with the amendments. I'm looking for third reading, please, on bylaw number 1788, Land Use Amendment 3510 Wishart Road. Do I have a mover and seconder? Do I already have that? I do. Okay, so then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bylaw number 1791, the Dairy and Cheese House Heritage Designation.
Who's first?
Thank you. Is that where we're at here? Is this? Yeah, first and second. Okay, so we're going to stick with the same mover and seconder for first and second. So I have Councillor Baxter and Councillor Parkinson. On first, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On second, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion to go in camera. Councillor Parkinson, thank you. All those, Councillor Logan on second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.